There was a time long ago when a warpstone meteor crash landed in the Far East, and in a flash, 2/3 of an entire people were wiped from the face of the world. The remnants of that tragedy can still be seen and felt today, corrupting the land and the creatures that live there. Guess who's back? The Ogre Kingdoms weren't too fond of the ruination visited upon them by the Dragon Emperor, so they're here to make Cathayan life miserable, and they'll do so with a combination of Stonehorns and the much-anticipated RHINOX Crushers. But the Dragon-Blooded have elite mounted warriors of their own, and leading their majestic aerial assault, a Shugengan wizard determined to put the ogres in their place. The embargo has dropped, the ogres are ready for their full debut, and we've got a fluffy tale of vengeance and rivalry stretching back thousands and thousands of years to share with you all today. And first, onto the breach, we've got a Stonehorn, a mammoth-sized monster with 110 armor, 20 bonus versus infantry, 70 charge bonus, and 35% missile resistance, which makes it exceptionally tough to bring down with missile fire. For comparison, the ancient Stegodon, already a bit of a tanky beast itself, only has 15% missile resist, so it will be used to break lines and tear out hordes of infantry. It'll be supported by 2 Saber Tusk pack, war beasts that are very important for the ogres with their cheap cost, high speed, and powerful bites, and behind them are the core of the army, a build designed around monstrous cavalry, Mournfang, and RHINOX, all with iron fists. And they all have innate 30% missile block chance from the front, which is quite useful against Cathay and Kislev. Leading the army is a Slaughter Master of the Lore of Beasts. And the reason I went Beasts here is that Pan's Pelt and Transformation of Kadon synergize incredibly well with cavalry-focused builds designed to shut down missile play. If you overcast Pans on your Mournfang and RHINOX, you're getting extra speed, defense, and physical resist in an AoE, which helps them trade a lot better in extended fights, and Manticore summons are great for diving into the rear and disrupting skirmishers or hunting down mages. Bunch of Noblars as you'd expect, and Gorgers looking freaky in their avocado face mask, fresh out their latest spa treatment, and they feel like a very solid unit. Unbreakable, bonus versus infantry, and Vanguard deploying with decent mobility. Moving into the tree line on my left flank, more Mournfang cavalry, also with iron fists, and the RHINOX Riders, which ring in at 1800 gold and have 130 armor. They can be extremely tough to bring down, especially when supported by the Troll Guts heal or Pan's Impenetrable Pelt. Completely devastating off the charge, impact damage and killing power out the ass. I'm expecting a lot from these bad boys against Cathay, and they've got some maneuverability too, so if they get a hammer and anvil off, there won't be much left afterwards to tell the tale. But down on the valley floor below march the armies of the Far East, and the most eye-popping element of their force comes in the form of multicolored Great Longma Riders, heavily armored and hypermobile shock flyers with a charge bonus almost as large as RHINOX themselves. Very good stats across the board, but they lack AP, which can be a bit problematic when facing down 130 armor monstrous cav. Lots of Jade Warriors and Peasants as per usual, 2 Jade Lancers, and the Celestial Dragon Guard crossbows, which absolutely do not lack in armor piercing, and along with the rest of the ranged units will attempt to bring down the beasts with some big time shooting. But floating above is the Dragon-Blooded Shugengan Lord, the progeny of the Dragon Emperor's 9 sons and daughters, and she wields the Lore of Yin. Scales of the Celestial Court makes her essentially unkillable for 20 seconds, Missile Mirror reflects ranged weapons back at their attackers, Cloak of Jet grants Snipe and Unspottable, and Ancestral Warriors summons a unit of Unbreakable Halberds from the Ether. Nas really likes that ability, has a nice flow to it. And finally, she has the Jade Amulet for more casting when casting. A lot of Jade in the Cathayan army, a lot of Dragons, Harmony, and Jade. Find a new mineral, you uninspired wieners. Those are the builds, and at the start of the match, it'll be a whole lot of posturing too. Now, I played a decent amount of Ogre battles so far, and to me, it feels like the regular Iron Fist infantry just doesn't cut it. And Man-Eaters certainly won't against range-focused factions because they just don't have any armor. So at least at the moment, I think the combination of Noblars, Monstrous Cav, and maybe a few Gorgers with Saber Tusk support feels like the way to go. Definitely an interesting map here. Choke points and lush gardens in the center, and as the Ogres, I'm going to do everything in my power to avoid meeting them down there because that's where they can easily protect their flanks with the cliffs and layer their archers with the Harmony bonuses. Instead, I'm going to get hyper-aggressive with the Stonehorn and Saber Tusk, and those poor, pasty peasants will be the first to spill blood, just as the Dragon Emperor intended. Big-time charge from the big boy monster, utterly smashing through and scattering them like bowling pins, and the Smilodons are close behind. Not quite going to get the terror out here. but just a little bit of poking and prodding, seeing what kind of response we can bait out. We'll retreat and gear up for another go once Cathay makes it across the creek, but don't want to be sitting there under the focus fire from Celestial Dragon Guard and a bunch of crossbows. Even with 35% missile resist, that only goes so far, and armor doesn't help against AP in this game, really. That's why it's called armor piercing. So yeah, time to retreat and think about how to engage. Like I said, no reason to go down into the valley floor and fight them in a choke point where they can layer their defense and get those harmony bonuses. I think it'll be a lot better if I retreat backwards a little bit more and have them come to me and try to apply pressure with their crossbows from down below where they're forced to fire upwards. Now, the Great Longma Riders have 105 speed, so they can easily catch up to my infantry, and one of the best ways they can be utilized in the early game is clear out the chaff, right? Once the Noblars are gone, then the Mournfang and RHINOX won't necessarily have good anvils to hammer from behind. And just like their combo cousins, they are the fodder. The pawns that must feel the wrath of artillery, monstrous stampedes, and devastating charges. Noblars have it rough. They are essentially slaves, and Longma Riders are born and bred to cut them down quickly. They do have to be careful though. Both Mournfang and Gorge units can close that gap quite quickly, so probably better safe than sorry. Get out of there before you've unleashed your full charge bonus, just so you don't potentially get pinned down. Now, the halberds are moving up the hill. Longma Riders are there in support. Both armies are staring at each other, wondering how they want to break stuff down. I don't have any damage spells that are actually good for clearing out chaff. I can't deal with the halberds in any way but charge them with Stonehorns and with my cav. And what I decided to do at this point was completely flip my army. So I'm basically pulling the Longma Riders away from the angle where my RHINOX Crushers are coming down the hill. And the Stampede is on, and it's about to get prehistoric, baby. 10,000 BC, all up in your grill. Y'all ain't ready for this one. It's not going to be much of an ambush here, just because they have so much ground to cover, but dragging the Mournfang through the center will kind of focus his attention for at least a few more moments and give the RHINOX a bit more time to draw closer. And they're linking up with the Stonehorn now for a big-time terror bomb and bone-crushing impact. Spears and halberds out on this flank are not designed to deal with that much mass, and even if for some reason the Ogres ended up being the very worst faction in the history of Total War, I think we will all still get massive enjoyment from moments like this, regardless. Gorgers, first in, then we're watching hundreds of infantry get splattered, pancaked, mushed, and mashed into a sacrifice stew fit for the Great Maw. It's glorious. Ogre charges are glorious, and the Jade Warriors have no chance of surviving this. I just said surviving. I don't know what that is. I think surviving is a better word. Let's use that one. Now, the Ancestral Warriors from the Dragon-Blooded Shugengan Lord. Really nice summon there. That's a unbreakable halberd unit, and that's exactly what he needs out on that flank to stabilize against all those monsters. Mournfang Cav just got their charge off, and a big Overcast Pan's Pelt, which at this point is a bit redundant, honestly. Everything routed so quickly that the Pan's Pelt didn't end up doing a whole lot. Now, it'll still let them speed boost down the hill into those crossbows, which are very out of position, but there's no real reason to stick around and fight with the Ancestral Warriors, so if that summon doesn't somehow get the Monstrous Cavalry completely tied down, well, they can just kind of be ignored. Now, these poor fellows, they're getting screwed hard by skirmish mode. Sometimes you spawn with it on, sometimes you spawn with it off. You gotta make sure you always disable it, because it will get you killed. Longma Riders with a gorgeous hammer and anvil into the rear of the Mournfang Cav, but they have 100 armor, so they won't exactly melt to that impact. It's a great engagement for Cathay. It's one they need, considering how disastrously the right flank has gone for them thus far, but still, Longma Riders are not designed to melt armored units. They're designed to clear out chaff and deal with middling to low armor stuff. They cannot just crack through 130 armor, but to be fair, most units cannot deal with that. I mean, they're incredibly tanky. That's what Ogre armored monsters are supposed to be like anyway. So it's a dream start for the Ogre Kingdoms and their Monstrous Cav so far. The Stonehorns and the RHINOX linked up, and they smash through an entire side of the engagement. But the other side is definitely going more Cathay's way. They've got the bodies, they've got the mass, they've got the Longma Riders with the great hammer and anvil off, and some of the Mournfang although I said they wouldn't melt right away, they're still taking a lot of damage pinned up against all these spears and halberds with a bunch of elite flyers charging in from behind. So the Stonehorn and the first transformation of Kadon summon, well, they've got some important roles to play here. And when you've got that much mass, you can move through entire formations of infantry and maybe get into the rear on the other side. That's what I love about the Stonehorn. It's got plenty of maneuverability. And if you want it somewhere, it will get there, because it will push through pretty much anything on its way. Mass is an important thing in Warhammer 3, and nothing is more massive than the Ogre Kingdoms. They got the guts, and they got the glory to prove it. So Mournfang's disengaging. Longma took some damage there for sure. One of them's down to about 1/3 health, but the Mournfang got beat up too. Shugengan Lord dropping the Key Blast. Kaioken times 100. This is to go even further beyond, dueling a Stonehorn. I'll be curious how that duel goes for her. She's not infantry, and Stonehorn don't have crazy melee attack values unless it's against infantry, so maybe that's a fight she can do okay in. Certainly not going to kill the monster anytime soon, but maybe better to have her occupying its time than the infantry that certainly won't be able to stand up to the rampaging freak. Mournfang coming down the hill, and another beautiful summon. Ancestral Warriors. More Unbreakable Halberds. They're essentially a Celestial Dragon Guard. I do think they're Spectral too. I think they have 0 armor, but like 75% physical resistance. And yeah, she's done a good job summoning them in important engagements, but that's the thing with this build, is that I've got the speed to kind of just ignore them. The best time to use that summon is when the Longma Riders have charged in from behind and pinned down the cav in place so they cannot retreat. So they're forced to fight in and amongst a bunch of Unbreakable Halberds. Otherwise, I can run away from them and then they'll just despawn after about a minute or so. Another RHINOX Crusher charge, straight through the Jade Warriors and into the second ranks, now into the Jade Warrior Crossbowmen, Stonehorn following up behind, and alley-oops for days. Crushing Stampede all the way through, and it's so satisfying to watch. It really doesn't get old. I've been waiting for this moment for so long. Like, how many videos have I talked about Monstrous Cavalry and how much I adore them? And while Crushers are maybe not the most cost-efficient troop choice in the Ogre roster, they certainly have impact damage that is pretty much second to none, except, you know, the Stonehorn itself, which has been beasting it up this game. But I've still got a lot of work to do here, because my Gorgers are dead, a lot of my fodder infantry is dead, and even 130 armor RHINOX Cav does not perform well against halberds and spears, and there's still some mass too. They chase some Mournfang cavalry all the way to the edge of the map, which is probably the right call. You want to make sure that Monstrous Cav does not return, because it's been nightmarish for Cathay so far. What spell is that? That's another Pan's Pelt. Again, not a particularly high value one. I could leave the Mournfangs in and try to deal with the halberds while that's active, but probably just better not to fight halberds frontally anyway. Just leave the Slaughtermaster to charge in from the flank, deal with the stragglers that are out and continuously getting pushed away from the main engagement, and pick them off one by one. You've seen me do that quite a few times over the last few battles, mostly because I've been using a lot of cavalry-focused builds. Longma Riders coming in here, and great fight for them, supported by the Dragon-Blooded Shugengan Lord. And these Mournfang will drop, and she's got her Scale of the Celestial Court active, 75% physical resistance, and I have no way to counter that. I can't get through that physical resist, because I don't really have access to magic damage at the moment. Now, Dismember was slowing down the Longma Riders, and I charged them from behind, and they somehow got up into the sky, which is not really how that's supposed to work. If you're on foot as a flyer and you get charged from behind, it should reset the cooldown on your ability to take flight, and you should be stuck on the ground there. So that was a little bit weird. I'm not sure what allowed him to get out of that, but we were playing, me and Wyvern Gaming, and we both kind of laughed, because he was like, yeah, they should not have escaped, and frankly, if he lost his Lord and his flyers there, this game's straight up over. He's on the back foot right now, but he has a chance to bring it back, potentially. If he had lost those units there, it would be game, set, match. There's no way back for him. So, interesting. Not sure what happened. Won't be able to explain it, but they're alive, and I've got to deal with it. Meanwhile, I can stomp the rest of his infantry into paste. And, I mean, the big question for Cathay right now is, how do you deal with a pretty healthy Stonehorn and a gaggle of roided up raged out RHINOX Riders that are hot to trot. Well, you pin them in place with the Jade Lancers, you charge in from the flank with the Longma Riders, and hope that's enough to crack through some of the armor, while the Celestial Dragon Guard crossbows, which are still alive, move in from behind and shoot into the non-Iron Fist side. And I think that's his plan here. Now, whether the Jade Lancers can hold long enough to make that happen, I'm not sure about that, as that'll be a big ask for them. And they're actually being debuffed by the -8 melee attack aura of that Slaughtermaster too. But they're holding on admirably, actually. I thought they would just kind of crumble right away. They are maybe getting some harmony bonuses at the moment, and with the Longma Riders charging in from the flank, this is not the worst fight ever for Cathay, but it's still not one they can win. So it's just about slowing it down. Oh, this is so bad. That's honestly going to be the game. Butcher is a single target heal that is incredible. I think it's 1.6% every second for like a really long time. I think it's like 20 seconds. So 1.6 times 20, that'd be like a 34% heal. And it gives them all their vigor back. So when you take an 1800 gold Crusher unit and then give them all their health back, it spells disaster for Cathay. I mean, that's their tier 3 army ability. It only unlocks when a bunch of stuff routes, and honestly, with the way the armies are set up in Warhammer 3 right now, Demons being unbreakable and Kislev being functionally unbreakable for the majority of the game, Cathay is one of the only armies they're going to be able to often get their tier 3 army ability. But that Butcher heal is huge for them, and they are surging forward, and they are ready to run over the rest of this Cathayan force. Now, the Longma Riders are preying on stuff on top of the hill, and they're actually doing a really good job now, even though they're severely beaten up. But the RHINOX are coming in, and their rage is about to be shared with the world. And this is what we're here for. This is what the title is all about. Rampage of the Rhinos, Celestial Dragon Guard, the rest of the crossbows, and even the halberds. They will not be able to survive. And we've got another army ability to use. Massacre. This is the tier 2. 25% base weapon damage, AP weapon damage, and causes terror. And as the Longma come in from behind, now you've got terror-causing RHINOX Riders, and it's a terror route for every single unit that is trying to fight them. You can't do it. RHINOX putting the team on their back in the late game and showing up hardcore when it really matters. Wow. They are beastly. As I said, at 1800 gold, probably not the most cost-efficient unit you can bring on the Ogre Kingdoms roster, but my god are they fun to use, and my lord do they hit hard. That made the Great Maw very pleased. There will be many sacrifices for the stew this eve. Awesome. Really love them. Absolutely adore RHINOX Crushers. Their damage value was not crazy high this game, but they didn't fight the Longma for that much, and it was more about the map control they gave me. Their ability to push through, to run over infantry, to tie down enemy units and use at 75 speed to bounce, just pinballing from all these targets across the battlefield. They were fantastic, even if their damage value didn't skyrocket into the stratosphere or anything. The Stonehorn was also awesome. 200 kills there. Gorgers got wiped out, but they were pretty beastly in the center. They help a lot with their unbreakable. I think the Pants Impenetrable Pelt was not used to its fullest potential here, but things routed so quickly that I just couldn't get the value out of it that I wanted. And Transformation of Kadana is always good. Diving into the back line, tying down ranged troops, all that. Yeah, I think this kind of build, using Iron Fist Cavalry to quickly swarm, use that mobility to shut down range play. Even against cannon builds, I think this will be a decent setup. Iron Blasters are going to be core in a lot of armies. You saw them in action a couple days ago. But yeah, for Cathay, not enough AP, I don't think. Longma Riders are not a terrible unit, but I don't think they're worth their price currently, and there's no way for him to know that I was going to be going for a full 130 armor cav rush. Longma weren't bad here, but they will perform much better against a 40 armor monstrous infantry rush, which is typically where Ogre Kingdoms infantry comes out about 40 armor. So, really good game. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one.